we decide when it starts. We
Hmm.
it's our vodcast. We got to finish up by 7:30 though, so it's gonna be like 52 minutes of just chatting. We're just chatting about the Dungeons and Dragons. We're gonna talk about games that we have been playing recently that are pretty inspirational and might inspire um, the way we want to run our games, or the way we do run our games, or make us rethink the way that we're running our games. So the first game we're going to talk about, everybody on the server's talking about it. Everybody's playing it. I've purchased it for the PC and for the PlayStation now, and I've running two different characters. I haven't even made it out of the first act. I'm in still in Act 1 of 6 or whatever with both my characters, but I'm playing co-op with my kid on the PlayStation, and I'm playing solo online kind of thing. Um, I'm really loving it. I played Diablo 1 as a kid. I skipped Diablo 2 because my life got real busy and I was off at college and stuff like that. I got back into it for Diablo 3, so I missed the best Diablo, and then played came back for the worst Diablo. I enjoyed Diablo 3. I thought it was pretty tame. I thought it was pretty disposable. It just kind of felt like it didn't feel like it was defining the action RPG genre. It just kind of felt
Yeah.
like it showed up for work, right? Like Torchlight and
Hmm.
some of these other games were just doing it better. And then I'm finding out about this Path of the Exiles, which apparently is like the champion of the whole genre, that sort of thing. I enjoyed it, but I will tell you what, you guys poisoned me with your hype talk about it the week leading up to it, and I was pretty good. I was like, I don't have time to play it. It's fine. But when I started to look into it, I was like, I'm running these two Curse of Strahd games. They're gothic horror. I've done my research, but could I have done a little bit more? Could I be a little bit more inspired? And so I was like, I'll give it a shot. And I am glad I
Hmm.
did because it is a blast.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For me, I've never played any Diablo game.
Holy
I think I've
shit, really?
when
Wow.
when I was growing up, my
Uh-huh.
action RPG was Sacred 2. I
Oh
don't know
my
if you ever heard of those.
goodness. Okay, yeah. All right.
So I played a
Wow.
lot of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, I didn't play Torchlight or anything like that either, but I knew about them.
Yeah.
Um, so this is my first actual time, actually playing a Diablo game. I have played Path of Exile, um, but this is actually the first one I'm actually, actually getting into.
So how do you? Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, how are you liking it?
so far, I'm loving it.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a very fun game.
Hmm.
It's hitting all the
It's a
sweet spots in
they
terms of
call it
dopamine.
a dopamine drip, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the dopamine trip of like getting new gear, and like it's not too complicated, so I can actually feel like I'm theory crafting and like figuring
Hmm.
out my build and stuff like that.
Right. Right.
Whereas like other games, like Path of Exile, I have to look it up. I can't, I'm not doing it
Right.
myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is really, I like that. It's not too complicated. It's just complicated enough to feel interesting.
Yeah. It's
So
it's the
I'm
first game in a while where I haven't bothered to look up a build, right? A game where
yeah,
you can have builds, and I'm like, you know what? I'll just figure it out on my own. I feel comfortable enough
yeah,
figuring it out on my own. And I started with World Tier 2, not World Tier 1, and I haven't found it to be particularly challenging, except for like a handful of bosses here and there.
yeah,
Um, even at World Tier 2, and even
hmm
with just making up the builds as I go along kind of thing.
yeah.
It's been real enjoyable. It's been real enjoyable. Um, so what about it would you like? What do you when you're playing it? What do you like?
Okay.
Man, you know what? We should probably be doing this in our games more, or I should be doing this as a DM more, or I should be doing this more as a storyteller.
So one of the things that I like, and maybe we don't do this in our. Maybe because I haven't run enough dungeons, but
Mm,
like the the idea of like a dungeon that it might have a path for you to go to. You don't have to do a lot of backtracking, but
mm.
the when you do have to do backtracking, that backtracking like leads you back to where you like designing dungeons.
Oh,
Where
like the
they
the
have
wall comes down, and now you're back in that central room again, sort of thing. Like
yeah,
if
that
you had to
or
loop all the way around, you don't actually have to
yeah, like
backtrack.
the dungeons
Yeah.
are kind of like set up like loops. So like
Yes.
whichever direction I go, I eventually end up going back to the main area I need to get to. But I had the choice to go every direction. Maybe I found something in this side. Maybe I found something on that side. Maybe I had to go to both sides at one point. But because it's a loop, and
Yeah.
like the entrance is maybe in the middle, I never feel like I'm backtracking. So that's one thing. Another thing too is just like they do a really good job with the theme and like quality.
Yeah.
Like they have like a this is more of a graphics thing, but like also their descriptions and
Sound
like
effects.
the sound effects and things like that are really good. I don't know how put that into D&D, but I think
Well,
one thing
I
that
think
could
a
be
lot
really
of us
cool.
already do that in D&D as far as the we get
Yeah,
you get the music and the soundboards and stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then uh, one thing that was kind of silly, but
Hmm.
we mentioned it last time we were playing. We were all in the chat where I think we were actually it was during Chris's job where Remy was explaining to his that he had to like tell his non gamer non ARPG friend about like what are
Oh, yeah.
the stakes and the these people and you're just saying oh they got trained like just doing that thinking exercise of like while I'm playing and I'm seeing this weird combination of monsters, okay, how would I explain this,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
like getting that training of like how to BS a random encounter.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
for me, I felt like I still didn't understand Gothic horror when I started playing this game. Like
Mm-hmm.
the introduction that we're watching right now, and it's like the background noise of us talking, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when these three dudes are like crucified upside down and their bodies are turned into like a placenta that then births like Lilith into the world. This is no spoilers because this is a fucking intro trailer for the game. It's like I was like, holy shit, right? Like I was
Yeah.
gripped. I was gripped like right away.
Mm-hmm.
And the in Curse of Strahd, like I'm like, man, am I is it still too soft? Do you know what I'm saying? Like that's what Diablo 4 is making me ask myself. I'm like, not the difficulty, right? I think it's still fucking hard as balls. Like
Yeah.
every week I'm like amazed that we still have a campaign to play the next week, right? Like I don't think the
Mm-hmm.
difficulty is hard. But I just feel like the horror I still don't have it. Do you know what I'm saying? And like I'm
Mm-hmm.
playing through this and that gothic horror is in every fiber like of the game. Like it just feels like it's always there. There's always that like the shocking terrible imagery. The good guys aren't really good. The bad guys are really bad, but there's worse bad guys than them. Like the darkness, the despair, the
Yeah.
um Gothic horror is, and I think I've discussed this on my Crystal prep streams before. It's like one step below Eldritch horror. Like Eldritch horror is we have no hope at all. Like
Yeah.
there is nothing we could ever do that will change the fact that we don't matter in the face of the intense power and insanity that is Eldritch, the gods of the past, the old gods, that kind of thing, right? So like
Yeah.
Gothic horror is like one step below that. Gothic horror is everything in the world, even the things that are good, are still pretty evil and still pretty bad. And the best we could hope for in our life is to do some small measure of good, even if it doesn't matter, right? So like Gothic horror, there's still that sort of like we can still hope to make some kind of difference for the smallest amount of time. Maybe we
Yeah.
can make a difference. Like there's still some hope in Gothic horror. When you get into Eldritch horror, you abandon all hope, ye who enter here, kind of thing. And I feel like that narrative. And again, I'm not very far in the game, but I feel like that narrative thread is still there, right? The world is fucked. Everybody's fucked. Everything's horrible. But everyone's like, but we gotta keep going. But we gotta keep
Yeah.
going. And like in Barovia, right? I think I've heard some players say like, why do these people even bother, right? Like, why?
Mm-hmm.
What else are they gonna do? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, they
Yeah.
they can't completely give up. There's just a little bit of hope left, and I think that that's tremendously important. But like everywhere I've gone in the world, everything is like I'm just like, damn. Like you hear about the head of the church in the first capital city, and the first thing I hear about this woman is that she took someone's eyes as
Mm-hmm.
punishment for like a sin that they committed. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my god. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like yeah, like and then I meet her and she's all like, like self-harmed up and like,
Mm-hmm.
tatted up and like goth punk nightclub priestess kind of thing. And everything about it is just hardcore. Like
Yeah.
hardcore. Like the and then I thought about Curse of Strahd, and like I kind of like overcompensated. I was like, oh yeah, anybody that's like good with the Morning Lord, I'm gonna make them like so fucking good, like as good as I possibly can. But like I think a real like dark fantasy like gothic horror setting, I almost feel like I failed because really like they would have to be just as hard as the rest of the world, one would think, right? For me, from my angle was I felt like the world needed that. They needed these like very strong pillars of goodness. And I'm kind
Yeah.
of like I don't know. I just I feel like there's I could go darker. I could go grimmer.
I guess the
Yeah.
question, I guess that question is that what you want to do? Like, do you
Mm.
want to have that level of
Well,
gothic horror darkness?
my goal
Because you
was
could,
to run a very scary game, and I don't know
Mhm.
if I'm there yet. Do you know what I'm saying?
But I mean, there's different ways of being scary. There's can be scary as in like everybody's kind of weird looking, and
That's true. That's true.
everything is very dark and threatening, or the scariness could be okay. Everything is really dangerous, and we need to be careful when we're
Mm.
doing our stuff.
True, true, true.
And
I'm running more, I think, of a horror survival with the rules that we're
yeah,
using. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But I'd
Because
like to
like
get to,
just
yeah.
like if we haven't had like a, I guess the only dungeons we've really had, at least in Nightfall, is the Death House, really.
Yeah.
And so like, but like walking around the Death House and not being able to see around the corners
Hmm.
and having the weird the sounds, and then what you call it, um the like not being able to see, needing our flashlights and stuff, needing like light and stuff like that, that made it really scary.
Mm.
And then like when we ran into the one that one animated armor, and
Yeah,
how
yeah,
it was
yeah.
like gonna hurt, it was deadly, like it will kill somebody,
Right.
at that level. That made it scary. And regardless of what how well you were describing something, like
Mm.
the mechanics also backed it up.
Also backed it up. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, speaking of mechanics, I have enjoyed in Diablo that even though it's an action RPG and it's mostly just hold down X, build up resource, pop abilities, build up resource,
Yeah.
pop abilities, there are situations, right? Situations where it's like, oh, you got to stand here for a certain amount of time. You got to stop these guys from touching these guys. You got to
Yeah.
run, yeah, you got to get this over here before that thing gets over there. And that really got me thinking, right? Like these kind of combat mini games, we talk about them a lot on the server, we theory craft
Yeah.
about them on the server, but when it actually comes time to running the game, how frequently do we actually get them onto the table, right?
Yeah, I mean, like that moment when we were, dealing with the stuff at Yester Hill, like we had an objective of getting the item, but like at the end of the day, it, for us to get that item, it probably is best to just,
Just to
go
burn,
ahead and
just
fight.
to yeah, just to burn down the dudes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
and we had
like,
this conversation about like 5e and how like it's very hard to give another objective if you can also get that objective by just killing all the enemies,
exactly. Now,
without unless you make the enemies so difficult to the point where at that point most people will probably just run instead of trying
so
to
so what
do
I
the
could have
objective.
done without too many spoilers, right, is
Mhm.
the boss of that encounter, because they, doing a ritual, right? That boss of
Yeah,
the encounter could have been invulnerable while the other ritualists were doing the ritual. And so
yeah,
then there's at least like an order of operations that you have to work through
yeah.
to kind of get results. Like there's just things that you can do as a game designer, and that's what a DM is, like in
Hmm.
addition to the other 50 hats that you have to wear as a game master.
Yeah,
But like you have the power to just say, "Oh yeah, force field." Right? You have the power to just
hmm,
say, "Nope, this is just how it works, magic, baby." Now,
yeah,
admittedly, fifth edition D&D, they're just going to shout at you like, "I just spell magic, I do this, I do the other thing," right?
yeah,
Which I mean, that's a whole nother topic of like,
yeah,
well, I guess it's kind of important because a lot of things we're going to talk about today, of what you could add to a game and what could you change. I feel like a lot of the reasons these things don't exist in 5e is because they would just get trivialized very quickly
hmm,
by magic and certain abilities. But yeah, like I like all the different, like especially the world quest challenges that you run into in this game. I like running into very strong boss monsters just wandering around in the wild. I love that. I already have that going
Yeah.
on for Curse of Strahd because it's so random
Hmm.
encounter heavy. So like again, every time I roll a random encounter, you guys could have a CR15 world boss show up. Like you could have the final boss of the whole
Yeah.
campaign show up, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's terrifying, right? But you have to
Yeah.
travel because you're here to play the game,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
and even when you guys have tried to sit still, like danger has come for you. So it's one of those things that like you just hope for the best kind of thing. And I feel that when I'm wandering around in Diablo, right? Like, what is going to be around the next corner? Is there going to be just a bunch of goatmen, or is there going to be one of them 20-foot tall goatmen with a fucking axe the size of a house, and he's got 6 names, and he could teleport, and he could summon more dudes, he could clone himself, and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, you don't really
Yeah.
know what you're going to get.
Hmm.
So, yeah. Catazor, we're just talking about Diablo, Tears of the Kingdom, and Solasta, and what kind of stuff we could sort of pull from them for our games, what could be inspiring from those games, that sort of thing.
I mean, with continuing with that idea, like when you have those random, like one of the things I run into a lot in Diablo is, and even inside dungeons, is the like there's like a bunch of beat up adventurers. And they're like, hey, can you help us?
Yes.
Uh, I run into that one a lot, and like it's always like the objective is to kill all the enemies, and hopefully you have some of those allies surviving at the end. Even if none of them survive, you still get a reward. But like the idea is like it's very hard,
Hmm. And
like to keep them alive because the monsters just run towards them because they're weaklings laying down on the floor, hurt.
absolutely right. And here's the thing: as a player, uh, if you're a metagaming player, you're a murder hobo player, right? You're like, man, why would I help these people, right? They suck.
Hmm.
They probably don't have anything useful anyways. If they
Yeah,
do, I'll just let them die and I'll take their stuff, right? So
yeah.
what you do as a DM is you train your players in the behaviors that you're looking for. So like early on, you make a very easy scenario to protect someone on the road, and then they don't have anything to reward the players with financially, right? But you, the
Hmm.
DM, are the fucking game engine. So you know what you do? You give everyone a boon,
Hmm.
right? Because boons
Yeah,
don't, yeah, boons don't last forever, and you give them like a boon of heroism. Like you didn't have to save this person's life, but you did. Now you have X, Y, Z. And
yeah,
then that you give that early on. The next time there's people in trouble, you know what I'm saying? They're gonna be like, oh
yeah.
shit, yeah, I want that boon, I want that reward. And like, what got me thinking about that was in Diablo when they have those obelisks everywhere, right? That you can activate and you get like a temporary buff or whatever. But
Yeah.
I was like, what if, right? You didn't have the obelisk or whatever, but what if you rewarded players in a temporary, ephemeral way for doing the things that you want them to do, that isn't required, but it's almost like a performance reward. For example, when we talked about the Curse of Strahd fight you guys just had, I could have had extra rewards in place if you guys had been able to, essentially, if I was looking for like a mercy award, right? If you were able to
Hmm.
complete this thing without killing any of the druids, you took them all alive or something like that. There
Yeah,
could be like a boon of mercy, right? So like you
yeah.
could you could kind of build into your encounters these sort of hidden rewards, these other objectives, and if you don't want them to be hidden, if everybody at the table's okay with it, and maybe they're into that kind of shit. You can say, hey, here's the fight, but if you can defeat them by before X happens, or if you can defeat them under Y condition, or if you can defeat them without Z happening,
Mm.
there's a boon in it for you. And I
Yeah.
feel like that would reinvigorate a lot of that kind of stale,
Encounters.
yeah, that stale fifth
Yeah.
edition feeling. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, like thinking about that, like a lot of campaign, you can also even like either integrate it into a campaign. Like I can see Odyssey with each god has their own thing that they like to happen during an encounter.
Yes, like beyond piety, essentially.
Yeah,
Beyond
beyond piety.
piety.
So like Kyra might have something like if you you know
Imbi-
cause something funny to happen to or I don't know, like things like that, like
Yeah,
end
yeah.
the end the
If you
encounter.
make the final kill of the encounter is done in like a goofy way, right? Like
Mhm.
like Solasta, right? You push them off a cliff even though you didn't have to, or you
Yeah,
knock a tree on top of them, even though you could have just bonked them with your sword. Like
yeah.
things like that, cinematic, right? Like
Hmm.
And that would actually work great for Mythic because all of you by now are champions of your chosen god, so there's
Yeah.
nowhere to go from here, right? So
Yeah.
now that you're
Yeah.
the champions, what other reward could there be? Well, there could be temporary boons granted.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of these temporary boons over flooding everything with equipment. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people were probably expecting you and I to say, "Oh, well, the thing I learned from Diablo 4 is people love getting treasure, and I'm going to hand out more treasure."
No.
I don't That's not the takeaway I had.
No.
That's not the takeaway
No.
I
It's
had.
not. No.
The thing about Diablo treasure is, and this is where part of that dopamine drip comes from, and this is why we've lost Larionis to Diablo 4. It's gambling. It's safe gambling.
Yeah.
Every monster is a pull on the slot machine. Every monster is a pull on the slot machine.
Hmm.
Are you going to get that unique? Are you? Are you going to get that unique? Probably not. You're probably not going to. Oh, but you did? Oh, good thing you didn't go to bed. If you had gone to bed, you wouldn't have gotten that unique. Oh, you were smart staying up till 3 in the morning.
You
Yeah,
go and do this next dungeon, you might get another one. Hey,
exactly.
you never
Why
know.
stop now? You're on a lucky streak, baby. You're on a lucky streak. Yo, look at that. 3 gemstones dropped after a unique. You know what this means. This is going to be a good night. What? It's not nighttime anymore? Call into work. It's fine. It's fine. Fine, 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 fine. Yeah, no, that's the dopamine drip. I
Yeah.
used to feel that. I used to feel that playing MMOs. But they've become such a treadmill experience that I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really feel that anymore. But yeah, I'm really digging it in Diablo. But I have a mindset with Diablo where it's like there will always be more treasure, there will always be more monsters, there will always be more
Yeah.
dungeons. Like I never give a shit. Like I'm just like, oh, that's cool. I just keep playing. I'm not here for big numbers. I'm here for the story kind of thing. So going back real quick to chat, Jared says for Gothic horror, I just go with the mindset that every good person is essentially, in addition, recovery to capture the harder vibe. Um, for the Gothic horror, I go with the mindset that every good person is essentially, in addition, recovery to capture the harder vibe. Oh, okay, okay. I think I kind of follow that. Um, yeah, like the people, you make the people really good so that they're such a rare and precious commodity, that they have even more value in the world. Like that was one of my biggest
Oh,
goals.
addiction.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
He
What?
said not addiction, addiction, especially in addiction recovery.
Oh, addiction recovery. Oh, okay, okay. Interesting. Hmm. Every good person is essentially in addiction recovery to capture the harder vibe. What are they? What addiction are they recovering from? I guess I'm not really following that one too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that for me, when I'm running like Curse of Strahd, I wanted the good people to be very easily identifiable as good people, and I wanted them to be like a rare and precious thing in the world that needed to be protected. And so like if you betrayed these people, if you let these people down, you really were an asshole. Like you really were giving into darkness to kind of let these people down, essentially. Which inevitably I think is going to happen in all 3 of my campaigns. I think there's going to be a point where a lot of the characters sort of just succumb to darkness. Oh, okay. Jared says they're good. They're clearly good, but they all have a past. Yeah, 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 yeah. They're somehow still good despite the terrible world that they live in. I got you. I got you. All right. We're gonna have to move on from Diablo 4.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to add before we do?
Um. Hmm. I guess I'll say one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the bosses have some pretty interesting mechanics
Mm-hmm.
that I think I might try and steal some. Not to be too spoilerly, but it's a lot of it's like MMO
Oh yeah,
mechanics
yeah,
and stuff like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
And then
Patterns and don't stand here
yeah,
and
don't
yeah, yeah.
stand here and stuff like that. But like some of them are like you know, they have an ad that comes up and that ad needs to be destroyed and
Before they
then
can
the
be
monster
killed. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
before they be killed, things like that. And I realized I haven't done that at all
Yeah,
in
yeah.
in D&D before. And I like that's like the most simplest thing. Like, hey, this person needs to you need to kill this other thing before you can hurt the boss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know why I haven't done that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times we overthink the boss gimmicks when there are some really tried and true classic ones that we're
Simple
just
ones,
yeah that
yeah,
we're not even trying. So yeah, these are
yeah,
definitely things that I'm trying to incorporate more like moving forward.
yeah.
All right. So, do you want to talk about Tears of the Kingdom next, or do you want to talk about
We can go Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears of the Kingdom? All right.
Yeah. Save the best for last, you know.
Of course, the best D&D game ever made for last. So
Mm-hmm.
Tears of the Kingdom. I am very old. I am like 42 years old. I played the original Nintendo Zelda with the gold cartridge. I played that. That was my first Zelda. I've been playing Zelda a very long time. A very a very long time, okay? I played so much Zelda that when I finally got to Twilight Princess, I turned it off after like the first dungeon and
Yeah.
I put my head in my hands and I wept because I said I can't do it anymore. I can't play any more Zelda games. Like I was done. I was done. And I am so old that I was there when the 3D games came out, right? And I was at a party and somebody brought their N64 over and we saw Mario 64 and we were like, what the fuck are we even looking at? He's moving around in the three-dimensional world. It's fucking Toy Story, but it's a video game. This is incredible. This is how old I am, people. And wait, he jumped on the turtle. He's surfing on the turtle. He's skateboarding around the turtle shell. Nothing could have ever prepared us for 3D games. Like,
Yeah.
blew our fucking minds to pieces, right? So you gotta
Mm-hmm.
imagine that I was like, okay, that's pretty cool, but I got shit to do, right? I got shit to do. I'm running a lot of D&D. I work full time. I try not to flunk out of high school. The whole deal. When in my senior year, when Zelda dropped for the N64, I didn't go to school that day. I drove to Toys R Us. This is a toy store in America that used to exist. I drove to Toys
Mm-hmm.
R Us and I bought an N64 and I bought the controller and I bought the game. There was no questions asked. I didn't bat an eye about how much money it was. Again, I worked full time, like all through high school, so I had plenty of money. I was like, I just bought it. I went home and I played it. And I didn't stop playing it for like 2 or 3 days until I beat it because I was consumed by it. It was incredible. It was one of the most incredible experiences of my entire life. Breath of the Wild came out, and like I tried to play Breath of the Wild, and I was like, this is so much work. Like, I have to cook spicy food so I'm not cold. I have like that's the dumbest shit I've ever. I hate this shit. This is
Epic
stupid.
lips.
Yeah, like this is the dumbest shit I've ever seen. Like, why would I do this to myself? Like, this is dumb, right? Like, I could not get into it. I tried
Yeah.
2 times to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, I had heard Remy talk about it enough with like reverence, like religious reverence, right? And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people were
Mm-hmm.
like, I can't believe that you don't like Breath of the Wild. It feels like the kind of game that you would really like. And I was like, I don't like this game. So finally, knowing that Tears of the Kingdom was coming out, I was like, I feel like I'm going to miss out on something big if I don't give this one more shot. So like a few months ago, I sat down and me and my kid basically like played through Breath of the Wild and we both got it. Like we got it. We were like, "Oh." Like there was this moment where you're just like, "I can do anything any way I want." And for me, that was really incredible because like I said, I've been playing Zelda since I was like a baby. And so
Yeah.
like those games, you have to do things the way they're supposed to be done. You have to solve the
Yeah.
puzzle the way the puzzle's designed. You have to go to the dungeons almost always in a specific order. Some of the games let you go in any order you want, but for the most part, it's very linear, it's very puzzle, and like they're good, but they get kind of stale to me. Breath of the
Mm-hmm.
Wild, you could literally just do whatever the fuck you want. And like they give you like a problem and you just figure it out. And there's like a lot of ways to do that. And then it just builds from there. Like the big brain thinking of like, well, what if I did it like this? Or well, I'll try this. And then it fucking works and you feel really good about yourself. And then you're like, you think about it later and you're like, I bet that wasn't how I was supposed to solve that puzzle. But it doesn't matter
Yeah.
because the game is so well designed that it lets you just figure figure out the world like yourself. It was so when I finally got that aha moment, I was like, "Oh my god." And it was really good timing because I'm running, these three Curse of Strahd games, and your Curse of Strahd is a sandbox game. It's a
Yeah.
sandbox game. So you're supposed to just let the players go where they want to go and do what they want to do. If they succumb to darkness and become the biggest murder hobos of all time, you got to run with it. If they try to be the champions of the realm, you got to go with it, right? Like you got to lean into whatever they're going to do. If they take dumb, stupid risks, if they go places they've been warned not to go, you just hope for the best. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And there is no wrong way. There is no good ending for Curse of Strahd. There's no like you did it perfect. You 5-star solution to this thing. It is very much just like this is the story that you told, right? This is
Yeah.
the journey that you went on. And and Breath of the Wild I feel is very similar to that too because like you could rush to the end of the game right away and
Hmm.
or you could take your time and explore like every nook and cranny. So I got really into it. I beat it. I enjoyed it. And then I got to play Tears of the Kingdom, and I went into it thinking to myself, well, I hope it's as good as Breath of the Wild. And it was better. It was better somehow than Breath of the Wild. It was just so fucking good. And without too many spoilers, the game is, I want to say, 2.5 times as big because they added a Skylands area, and then they added an Underdark.
Yeah.
So there's an entire Underdark, but in the new game, and it's completely dark. I mean, pitch black. You have to
Yeah.
provide all of the light sources and your resources for lights and all that. Like you decide how you're gonna do that.
Spelunking.
Yes, it feels so immersive to be like in this Underdark setting, and it's scary and it's dangerous and it's unknown, and like your resources are limited and you have to make good choices with them, and you run into something off in the darkness and you're not sure what it is, and then you're like, holy shit, I can't believe that is what it is. And there's just like, it's so good. So like the exploration, they somehow made it even more exciting. And then the puzzles, the new powers, and then the addition of contraptions, essentially like silly
Yeah.
like contraption as machines.
Building stuff.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
just you just build all sorts of wild and crazy shit, all this engineering and stuff like that. If you are like a D&D player and you love playing Artificer, like this is your game. Like this is the game. Like cuz
Mhm.
you don't need the DM's permission. The DM gives you all of this shit, and you could build a fucking Gundam and fly around in it, fire
Mhm.
rockets at everybody. Turn your shield into a jetpack. I mean, like catapults, cars, trains. Like you could build all this crazy shit, and it's like,
Creativity.
yeah, and before in Breath of the Wild, the way that you could solve a puzzle was broad, but now it feels like the way to solve a puzzle is nearly infinite. Like you could do so much now, like so much. It's
Yep.
absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So my take from it, right, as I'm playing this game is I was like, I want to run games, and I feel like I kind of do this with my puzzles and my traps and shit already. I want to be fucking flexible. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I want to be as
Hmm.
flexible as I can because I don't want anybody to wait around until somebody solves the puzzle the only way I feel it should be solved, or
Yeah.
answers the riddle with the only answer I think is acceptable. Like
Yeah.
this is a video game that somehow understands that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I think that's beautiful. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's such a pleasing and rewarding experience as a player, to have that freedom and that sort of forgiveness
S-
baked in.
So the way to do that,
Hmm.
and I think I thought about this a couple times now in video games and just like how to do that in D&D is that you just have to come up with the system
Hmm.
and the problem
Hmm.
and not do that all that work at a time and stick with it. Like you just have to come up with a good set of tools and a good set of rules.
Yep.
And at that point, then you just let the players be creative.
Yeah.
And if it makes sense, like D&D, 101, just if there's a chance to fail or a chance to succeed, let them roll and see what happens.
Yep. See, that's to me that's the best description of a dungeon master that Matt Colville has ever given was he says, "My job is to present problems, not solutions."
Yeah.
Right? Like you create tension, you create adversity, you create problems that need to be solved. It's not your job to solve those problems. That's the player's job to solve that problem.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So, if the problem's too big and they have to run, then that's the solution they come up with. If the
Mm-hmm.
problem's too difficult and some of them die, that's the story. That's how it went. If
Mm-hmm.
they come up with an incredible thing that just trivializes the whole thing in the first round, fucking
All
hallelujah.
right.
You know they're going to talk
Yeah.
about
All
that
right.
for the rest of their
Yeah.
life. They're going to talk about that for the rest of their life. The time that they were able to shut down an encounter in one round. You present the problem. They give you the solution. And that's what I think my big takeaway is from Tears of the Kingdom is just don't
I will say.
don't stress
I,
having all the answers. Yeah.
yeah, but I will say though is that to make it work, you got to have a good set of you know rules and a good set of like you have to have a good system to work with that. Because if you don't have something that's like a consistent like playground, like the reason why it works so well in Tears of the Kingdom because they give you a good
They
set of
know they
rules.
know what tools you have. They
Yeah, they
know
know
it.
what
Yeah, yeah.
tools you have. Even if you may not have it, they know what tools you can get.
Hmm.
So even maybe you can't, you don't may not have it right now. You might have, there's tools that you probably could have got if you like in the beginning. You don't get all your your skills, all
Right.
your hand stuff, but you may have you're gonna have one of them, and they
Hmm.
say, okay, figure it out with this one tool you have. It's probably possible. If it's not possible, leave and come back when you have more tools. Maybe you can do it then,
Yeah.
or maybe you find some creative solution with the tools you have. But the idea is that you have a set of tools, and here's a set of problems, and there's a logic to this world, and this is you, and we've explained that logic to you.
Hmm.
So go ahead, be as creative as you can inside that limit, and
And
we'll make it work.
and like I mentioned earlier, that's where things start to get a bit complicated by the D&D 5th edition magic system. Because the
Yeah.
higher in level they are, the easier it is to trivialize every problem. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when the script kind of gets flipped on the DM. Like, and I say this
Yeah.
having designed and run high level D&D, it becomes when you're designing the encounter, you have to start thinking ahead of an entire magic system, or that magic system is going to trivialize everything. And then those really smart, I trivialized it in one round occurrences, they aren't special anymore. They're just the routine, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm enjoying about our Curse of Strahd game is you guys run into somebody, you have allies who know enough about magic to say, "Oh, well, they need a greater restoration." But like, what the fuck is that, right? Where are you
Yeah.
going to get that, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, we could solve this instantly if we had this, but you don't have that. So now you have to look for some other way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to find some other way, some other ally, some other route, some other alchemical solution, something. You have to find some other way
Yeah.
to do that. And without giving too many spoilers, like I think you guys are doing a really good job with that. And there's one particular issue that somebody suggested. Oh, well, now that X happened, maybe Y could happen. And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, I don't see why not, kind of thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
that kind of created a situation where um, you through gameplay and cleverness and roleplay kind of found a solution that I didn't even consider existing. But as soon as it was spoken into the world, I was like, oh yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That's a great
Mm-hmm.
idea. Yeah. And so like, yeah, I don't know. I didn't learn anything from this game where I was like, I need help with puzzles. I need help with dungeon design. I will say that the bosses in this game are way better than Breath of the Wild. I don't know if there's too much I picked up from these bosses for designs. Most of them operate in phases, like good video game bosses. So there's like pattern A, you learn that they lose 33% of their health. Now it's time for pattern B, 33% of health. Now it's time for pattern C. It's pretty rule of three, pretty general in that
And
regard.
that's Zelda in a nutshell. Rule of three.
Yeah, rule of three for sure. Yeah, Triforce. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, like overall though, just a great inspiration for open world exploration and for open-minded
So
design.
speaking about that, and like,
Hmm.
I guess you're gonna have Alkenstar going up, and that's supposed to be a
Hmm.
drama. And I'm running Cyberpunk, and there's a lot of crime drama inside of Cyberpunk,
Yeah.
and that creative coming up with solutions to problems. Because like I know in Cyberpunk, in the way the adventures are written, they give the players a situation, and like here's what here's what's going on.
Hmm.
They don't really say like this is gonna happen, and when the players do this. They say these are what the characters are doing. This is what they're trying to do, and this is what they succeed. They will succeed on this if no one gets involved,
Mm.
right? And so I'm just running the NPCs in the background, having them giving the players the information that they search for, and they have to come up with a solution in like a cyberpunk world where you could go to the store and buy a grenade, or you can go you can do all these things if you have the money or the resources for it. And so they have to just come up with solutions. And at that point, it's just a matter of like, okay, how would the world react to just that weird solution
Mm.
that came up with? And so I guess like for you, I don't know, I haven't looked at Alkenstar like the actual you know thing yet, but has thought about any of that openness for solving solutions for
I
that?
I certainly have. There is a reputation for Pathfinder 2E that it is very like set piece battle, and you kind of go
Mm-hmm.
from one beautifully scripted encounter to another beautifully scripted encounter. What I've read so far, even like the initial like tutorial adventure that you go on, they're like
Mm-hmm.
the players might try to do it this way. They might try to do it that way. They might try to do it this way. They might try to do it that way. And I was kind of impressed that the writers took the time to acknowledge that the problem that they had presented would maybe, right, necessitate
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different solutions that
Yeah.
might push them in a lot of different directions. Very frequently with WotC adventures, I feel like they're like, so anyways, the players will do this. It's like, no, they won't.
Yeah.
Are you crazy? They're not gonna do that. And so like, yeah. Katazor points out in chat, the game teaches us that the players learn how to defeat an enemy. They should encounter again at least once so they can apply the knowledge they learned. So that is one of the design philosophies I tried to use in Red Handed Doom, because you're facing a known enemy over and over and over again. You learn more about the troops, that kind of thing. I don't feel like it got too much play because they did travel to different regions. I did try to introduce different things, but they did come to know certain enemies that they were more worried about or less worried about, and they did come to understand like, oh, I could survive being fired on by these people now because I know, that they're good shots, but now my armor class is too good to worry about it, sort of thing. So, yes, that is huge. I'm trying again to do that in Curse of Strahd, where there is a limited number of monsters in the world, and you will encounter those monsters over and over again. And then there are types of monsters in the world. So, like zombie creatures, they have their parts fall off and continue to fight by themselves. Skeletons, well, Dom, you haven't encountered any skeletons yet, but I'm gonna tell you, skeletons in Curse of Strahd, they explode.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chance that they explode when they die. So like, there's things that you'll learn, and then when you encounter those monsters again, you know now to watch out for that kind of stuff.
I
By
mean, it
now,
happened
yeah,
to us with the jellyfish mist guy.
exactly, yeah. Like the
Yeah,
first
that
time,
second time,
yeah,
we ran into him, we knew what we were doing.
exactly, exactly. I I used to have a philosophy of there's so many monsters for 5e. There's so many things out there. Why use the same monsters over and over again, right? But there is a good feeling as a player when you face that monster again and you kick its ass because now you know what to expect. Now you've learned from the previous encounter. So yeah, in this game, in Breath of the Wild, in Breath of the Wild, Guardian, right? First time you encounter Guardian, you shit your pants. By the end of the game, you're fighting Guardians and you're really confident, you know what you're doing, and it's fucking awesome. They're shooting laser beams at you and setting the grass on fire, and you float up in the air currents from the grass being on fire, and you slow motion bullet time fire arrows at them, and you just feel like a fucking champion. Like, you wouldn't have that experience if you only ever faced one Guardian.
You know, there's another thing there that we were talking about, like with the system and puzzle stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like the first time you learn that, hey, if I use my glider on top of flaming grass, I fly up in the air. Okay, how can I apply that to everything else that could
Right.
that So like having those like small little like logic things that happen in the world, and then being able, like, next time they see it, they're like, oh, okay, I've seen this before, so this must be mean this, and because it's not just the monsters, it could just be like puzzles, like aspects of a puzzle or aspects of an encounter. It doesn't necessarily have to be the monster that you repeat and the players learn from.
Yeah. And Tears of the Kingdom is so good about that sort of consistency. For example, there's a puzzle in the game where you have to put rocks in like there's a rock missing from a pattern. Like the rocks are in a pattern,
Yeah.
one rock is missing. If you have a rock fused to your sword, you can just jump up in the air and slam the rock into the spot where it's missing, and that will count as completing the puzzle, because technically you put a rock where it was supposed to go. You didn't carry the rock over and drop it. You just slammed a fucking rock down that was on the end of your sword, and it counts as like solving that puzzle. But yeah, I love it. I love that consistency of learning the world and learning about the creatures in the world, and now you have that knowledge and now you have that power.
It makes like that thought just makes me feel like making doing a homebrew game where like it doesn't necessarily have to follow the specific rules of D&D of that we come to learn about the magic systems in D&D, and just give people those things. Like I know you've always talked about like maybe making a one shot or a mini series that's Breath of the Wild theme.
Yeah.
And just like and like how you did it with the Divinity one shot.
Divinity, yeah, and everyone that had played Divinity was looking forward to using and abusing those Divinity concepts, right? Of poison plus fire equals explosion. Like, you're gonna get it. Oil plus fire equals a lot of fire. Yeah, and like that kind of stuff is like great. Like it really infused a lot of fun into the 5th edition system just to have those small few things. Yeah. So like I don't think it's too late for my Curse of Strahd games, honestly, to kind of seed a little bit more of that like into the world. Like, the monsters all have like elemental weaknesses. They all have weaknesses from the supplement monster weaknesses. They all have bloodied actions. So you guys like last night I knew exactly what you're doing. You held Anne's action because you didn't want to bloody that guy too soon, because you knew that he would get a counterattack, like as part of being bloodied. He would get to use his corner ability to make an attack. And so you guys baited his reaction out of him, and then did a bunch of damage, dropped him to bloodied, and denied him his extra counterattack action. And I was so happy when I saw that, because I was like, they're learning. Oh man, like they fought these berserkers. This is probably your 4th or 5th time fighting those berserkers, and by now you guys know exactly what to expect. You know where
we're playing checkers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that consistency of enemies, that consistency in the world, right? It gives you a feeling of growth, not mechanically, but as a player. Like you are growing as a player, and that is one of the things I love about Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, is you are rewarded for learning how the world works. You are rewarded for paying attention to the world. So,
and it's really good, like in Curse of Strahd and how that thing, because we're isekai, like it makes sense. And like, okay, we're here, we don't know, and then we're seeing, and then we're like, okay, let's just take that because we have to. The world is hard, so we have to learn. or we die.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I love the fact that because you guys are isekai, I can get away from revamping so many of the monsters. Because, like a normal, like, Forgotten Realms character or D&D character or whatever, right? You're kind of going into the world and you're like, I know what a troll is, and I know what a this is, and I know
Hmm.
what that is. But, like, do you know what they are in in Barovia, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the isekai makes it even better because you guys don't know shit other than what you've heard about in pop culture and movies and stuff like that. And so
Yeah.
it's always fun too to see your characters comparing the monsters from Earth, right, with the monsters that you're
Mhm.
encountering in the world, and like the comparisons and what myths were true and what weren't, and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
all right, so a little bit of time left. I know we got to end at like 7:30, and
So,
there's only 2 minutes.
yeah.
So we'll talk about Solasta real quick. We'll talk about Solasta. So we play a lot of Solasta, and what what are we learning from Solasta? We already had a stream where we talked about this kind of stuff, but what from the new expansion, I guess? What are we learning from Solasta here? Like
Man,
the
Dragonborns need help.
Dragonborns need help in every system for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. Um, I think what I'm learning from the expansion, they've definitely upped the writing.
Yeah.
The quality of the writing is better. The NPCs are more interesting. I think that's
Mhm.
really good. Um, their lore building has always been pretty strong, but they really doubled down on the lore building. But
Yeah.
it's all optional, right? It's all like books and scrolls and shit like that. So if you don't want
Yeah.
the lore, you don't have to have the lore. But I found the lore to be relatively interesting
Yeah,
lore.
I like their take on like gnomes and their take on tieflings and stuff like that for this expansion.
Yeah,
Like,
the gnomes, the tieflings are well done. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I love the idea that this world is so backwards and so like isolated from the rest of the multiverse. They don't even know what fucking demons are. I think
hmm,
that's kind of interesting, an interesting take on it.
yeah.
I would say that what I'm learning from them is do not be afraid to make your bosses cool. Like, there have been a handful of homebrew bosses that were amazing. Vampire Lady.
Yep.
Yeah, Vampire Lady was awesome.
Hmm.
Who were some, like, there was only a handful of them that really stood out. We run into a room. There's 2 dragons there. We think, oh, damn, shit gonna get real. No, it's not. We run into a fucking ghost dragon with like 357 hit points. We're like, shit's gonna get real. No, still not getting real.
We
And,
ran into 4 lava spiders.
yeah,
Nope.
yeah, they're homebrew lava spiders, stronger
Yep.
than any boss they've had in the whole game. What it's taught me is that raw 5e is garbage. Like that's what Solasta has taught me. Like raw 5e could only take you so far.
Yeah.
If you want something cool, if you want something memorable, if you want something um, that is going to make people sit up in their chair and pay attention, you have to take the extra time to craft something really special and unique because again, cheese pizza baby, 5e, the 5e cheese pizza. Nobody pays attention to cheese pizza. Doesn't matter how good the pizza is, doesn't matter how much cheese you put on that cheese pizza. There's still a cheese pizza. Like you gotta spice it up. You got to. And that's
Yeah.
that's my big lesson from Celasta's Palace of Ice is I'm still not impressed. Like that's the problem. Like I'm still chasing the high of Vampire Lady and Lava Spiders, and
Yep.
people can't come to us and say, well, you guys aren't playing on the hardest difficulty level. We're playing on a difficulty level where we get coup de grace by everything, and everything plays very optimally. The only way we could make the game any harder is if we played on the highest difficulty level, and
And
all that
at that
does
point,
is
just make
is
numbers.
it just makes big numbers. So every fight
Yeah.
takes forever. I want challenging mechanics. I don't want challenging numbers, right? I want monsters that do interesting things. What happened to all them flying snakes? What happened to the dire death crows? Like, where did all those
Hmm.
motherfuckers go? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I thought, honestly, that with this expansion, especially when I saw that there were demons, I got really excited. I was like, they're gonna do some really cool stuff, and it just feels like, nah, It might as well be a Wizards of the Coast store-bought adventure at this point,
Yeah.
which is just
I
really
will say
disappointing.
one thing I've taken from Solasta that I've kind of sort of implemented in Cyberpunk
Mm.
is a bit of their faction stuff.
Oh yeah, okay, okay.
So like the idea of like, I mean, yeah, they're just fight in this game. The mechanic what is like very like watered down. You just find a book, give it to a faction, and they give you allow you to buy stuff.
Hmm.
But like the idea of like doing stuff, finding something out in the world, choosing who you want to help, and then hopefully getting the rewards from them, knowing what those rewards from you can get from them, and like
Mm.
doing that stuff. That's pretty much how cyberpunks work. You meet a fixer, they're not gonna want to sell stuff to you unless you do something for them.
Yeah.
And maybe you find maybe and then like I'll just throw something random in like a side quest they done. That random thing could be worth to whoever they want to sell it to, and by selling it to that person likes them a little bit more, so then that offers up more things for them.
Now, do you complicate it by having certain factions opposed to each other? So if we help faction A, we will get faction with them, but we're going to lose faction with B and C.
So that depend. It depend. Like the way I do that is with the item that they find. So they might find something that belongs to faction A, but faction B wants it.
Mm-hmm.
So who do you give? Do you give it to faction A? Because if you give it to faction A, faction B is not going to like it because you gave it to faction A. If you give it to faction B might give you something else
Mm.
and might help you with faction C, maybe. Or
So
but
how
then faction A is going to be upset.
how meta are you with this explanation to the players?
So I'm not fully meta about
Uh-huh.
it. What I'll do is they have an item, and somebody would want it, and it's
Mm.
obvious that they will be upset if you don't give it to them.
Right, right,
And
right.
that's about it. That's about as meta I'll get. After that, then hopefully the consequences will show up, and then maybe if they don't, if they're lucky enough, maybe the consequences never show up because I roll for them to do stuff to find them as well.
Yeah, fair, fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never forget, and I have so much respect for you still to this day, when Remy refused to turn in the the quest item to the quest giver. He's like, "No, I'm gonna keep it for myself." And you were like, "Are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm just laughing to myself because I was like, "What if, what if Dom is just like, all right, well, fuck you. Like, guess the store's not getting upgraded." And then the store didn't get upgraded, and I was like, "Oh my god."
He needed it.
Yeah, no, I was like, that's amazing. Like that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like to have real consequences in the world, to be involved in the world, like to be
Mm-hmm.
connected to the world. Um, so I'm running 3 different Curse of Strahd games. In Curse of Strahd, you guys did more for the Vineyard quest than the others,
Mm-hmm.
and that forever changes your factions
Yeah.
in the game. But conversely, Daybreak did a quest series that the other two, you and Classic, did not do, and that changes all of their factions and allies and stuff
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, in Barovia there are these different factions you may have noticed, like working and
Mm-hmm.
with each other, and if you help one, you're screwing yourself over with the other, and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. So yeah, like that is a great thing to take from
Yeah.
Solasta is that,
Yeah.
and of course the crafting system is still great, and the travel events are
Oh
hilarious.
yeah. That's what I
Yeah,
need to get. I need to get
yeah.
the that.
We have to sit
You know.
down. We have to sit down with ChatGPT, and we need to make a list of like 1,000 things. We have the AI generated 1,000 things that happen when you're traveling, and then you just
Mm-hmm.
have the table, and while they're traveling, you just hit the button a few times, and
Yep.
it randomly picks a person in the party, and it says Jojo found a pair of old boots. The end.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like just
Mm-hmm.
little
Yep.
just little things like that to create that kind of immersion. That is something that Celesta still does so well, is the travel. The travel, the crafting, the factions, they're all very, very solid.
Yeah.
Um
I think
and
I think the
the
next time
environments. I think the environments are fantastic.
I have like a driving sequence in Cyberpunk, I'm just gonna ask them, hey, has anything happened while you guys are driving to this location?
Oh
Just
yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't have to be anything serious or anything. Just
Yeah,
let
just
me know.
ask them like what's on the
Yeah.
radio. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I still like playing Cyberpunk video game. Like I would always let the NPCs drive all the way to the destination. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just thought it was so immersive to just ride in the car because I always drive because IRL I get pretty car sick if I'm not the driver. And so
Hmm.
like it was just like real. It just took me back to like like my younger days when you're not always I wasn't always driving myself everywhere, and I'm just kind of vibing in the passenger seat, just looking out the window. The rain's falling
Hmm.
on the window. Just such a nice immersive thing. So little details like that, like little details like food and drinks and changing clothes and remembering to bathe and all those little things, they go such a
Hmm.
long way to like make those characters, make those players invested in the world and in the characters, um, so that it hurts even more when they
It's,
lose them.
I haven't been enforcing it too hard in Cyberpunk, but like that's you actually have to buy your clothes, each
Yeah.
individual piece of clothes, and if you only have one, that's the same clothes you're wearing all the time. So
Hmm.
you guys go digging into crap.
Yeah.
That's your clothes. That's the only set of clothes you have. That's like I haven't been enforcing it. I probably now I need to remember.
Yeah.
Gotta give myself a note to start enforcing it.
Well, and here's the
'Cause-
thing. In fifth edition, right, you try to enforce that, and someone's like, prestidigitation! And then it's like,
yeah,
well, I guess that's that. You know what I mean?
yeah. Hey, I mean,
Yeah. And so, like, and that's immersive in so much as, like, oh, magic good. Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah. For the
It,
first, it's immersive the first time you do it. After that, if you have to do that every single time, then
it's just another example of the magic system trivializing other aspects of play, right? And in this
yeah,
case, it's just simple immersion is being
yeah,
trivialized. Yeah.
yeah.
But good stuff. We're playing a lot of good games right now, and
Yeah.
also we're also playing Solasta, and so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
We could have probably talked about Dragon's Dogma. I did make a Dragon's Dogma monster, in
You did?
5e. Yeah, I did.
Did you make this
It's in
the
Curse of
lizard? The
Strahd.
lizard?
Yeah, maybe you guys should go to the swamp. I don't know, man.
Okay, I think I know who it is. I think
Yeah.
Arisen cut
Cut the tail.
sever the
How?
tail.
What's its weakness? This big, fat, juicy tail flopping around. It could be anything. I don't know. Um, yeah, but the tail cut mechanics I came up with are pretty. I think they're pretty good, honestly, for a fifth edition system.
Right.
So yeah. So I think just a quick nod to Dragon's Dogma, that if you're looking for good monster design,
Yeah.
like yeah, that is definitely the
Mm-hmm.
strongest point of that game. I am excited to try to carve out some time this weekend to do sort of a makeup stream for missing the last 2 weeks, because I am actually finding myself missing Princess Meatball, and all of the adorable Dragon's Dogma monsters. Not really missing three waifus shouting at me all the time. That got old real quick. But yeah.
Okay. All right. Gotta get
Anyways,
going.
you got to get going. Thank you
Yeah.
everybody for hanging out in chat. If you're watching this VOD on YouTube, go ahead and comment. What are some games you're playing right now that have inspired you, without too many spoilers, to run your games better, or change the way you're running your games? Because I'm very curious. I'd like to hear about it. Hope everybody enjoys their weekend. No real announcements. The biggest announcement I have is Monday night. You are welcome to hang out with us on stream. We're having the epilogue and wrap party for the Odyssey of the Dragons Odyssey Prime campaign. So level 1 to 20. The second half after the epilogues, we're going to answer questions from anybody in chat that has them. We're going to ask each other questions. We're really going to like crack the book open and talk about all the stuff for the whole campaign. And so you're welcome to join us for that. All right. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.